Here's some more practice with scale changes and translations, kind of putting them together. So let's look at this. For the domain, well, we know that all of these functions, even when they're shifted left or right, they continue to go on forever and ever to the left and right. So the domain continues to be all reals. Now the range does get affected. We have to look at how our range is affected. First of all, we are moving the axis up 2, and then, so I've got to think about what my max and min values are. So my min and my max values, I would be starting at 2, and then I would go down 4. That would be because my amplitude is 4, and I would be at 2, and I would go up 4. So I start at the axis plus or minus the amplitude is going to show me where those min and max values are. So this graph is going to go from -2 to 6. So my range is that y is between -2 and 6. You could also write it this way, like that. All right, my period, we have to remember, is always 2 pi times the x scale change. So that's going to be 2 pi times, look at what x is being multiplied by, just by 1. So it's still 2 pi. Maybe I should circle these answers. The amplitude is the absolute value of the y scale change, which would be right here. So that would be 4. The phase shift in the equation says minus pi, which means in the actual rule it would be plus pi, or in words that would be right pi. And my vertical shift is +2 or up 2. Okay, let's go to number 2. All right, let's look at this equation and see if we can figure this out. It says we can sketch a graph. So if you want to sketch a graph, you can do that. First of all, in all of these, I know that it continues left and right forever, so my domain continues to be all reals. As far as my range, I think about my vertical shift, and there is none, which means I'm starting at 0. 0 is my axis. Just like up here in this first one, my axis was at 2 and went down 4 and up 4. Okay, so this here, my axis is at 0, and it's going to be plus or minus 7. So I'm going to go from -7 to +7 is going to be my range, and I could write that as an inequality or in the bracket notation that I have there. So I could have it written like this or like this. My period is 2 pi times the x scale change. There's no scale change on the x, so that's still just 2 pi. My amplitude is 7. My phase shift, and the equation says plus, which means in the rule it's going to be minus 3 pi over 2, or in words that's left 3 pi over 2. And my vertical shift, I don't have anything, there is none. Okay, let's go to the next page. Got 3 more examples here to do. All right, my domain again is still all reals. My range, let's see, I have now been moved, my axis has been moved to -3, and it's going to be plus or minus this amplitude. So the minimum value would be -3 minus 4.5, and the maximum value will be -3 plus 4.5. So that's going to be -7.5. It's going to be the lowest part of the graph, and a +1.5 would be the highest. So I can write this in bracket notation, -7.5 to 1.5. or as an inequality. Either way. My period, I still have nothing that I'm multiplying this x by, and so it's just going to be 2 pi times 1, which is still just 2 pi. My amplitude is 4.5. My phase shift says plus pi 0.4 in the equation, which means it's minus pi over 4 in the rule, which would be left pi over 4. The vertical shift is minus 3 or down 3 units. Let's go to number 4. We are asked for the period. Period is always 2 pi times the x scale change. Now, the x scale change, there is one here. Now, in the equation, it says times 5 pi, which means in the scale change, it would have been x divided by 5 pi. And then there is no y scale change, so it's going to be 2 pi times 1 over 5 pi, because this is like a 1 over 5 pi. The pi's cancel, and the period is simply 2/5. The amplitude, I don't see any number out here in the front being multiplied by y, so the amplitude is still just 1. The phase shift, we're not adding or subtracting anything to the x inside the parentheses, so there is none. And the vertical shift is plus 2 or up 2 units. And number 5. So with this one, let's look at the period. The period is always 2 pi times the x scale change. And let's see, it looks like x is being divided by 6, so in this actual scale change, it would be 6 times x. So it's going to be 2 pi times 6, which is 12 pi. And let's see, the y scale change is 3y. Oh, you know what I just realized? This is tangent. And tangent's period is only pi. So this should just be pi, and then this should be 6 pi. All right. Because remember, tangent's period is not 2 pi, it's just pi. The amplitude is 3, because that's the absolute value of the y scale change. The phase shift, there's nothing being added or subtracted, so there's none. And the vertical shift is plus 2 or up 2.